Welcome to CSS Intro Part 3, and we're kind of playing around in our W3 Schools area here. This is what we started working on, and we just kind of put some padding inside this H1 element, which is a heading element. We put padding inside this paragraph, and what we're going to do is, here's an example of just, and again, this is just stuff we're just kind of messing around with. We're going to add another paragraph, and we're going to put in some kind of Greek text in here, or Latin text that's just going to be like filler text that we're going to work with a little bit. And it has, you can see it has a border, it has a different background color. So we're going to work with that a little bit. So I'm going to go back to here and we're going to add another paragraph. Now, before we add a style for another paragraph, we need a second paragraph. So I'll just copy the HTML and I'll just paste it down here. And I'll just say this is another paragraph. It'll be as generic as possible. This is another paragraph. I'll hit run. Now, when I do that, notice that when I add another paragraph, it does the same thing as the first one. That's because our style is targeting all paragraphs. It's saying every P element in this document is going to get these styles. So it's going to be exactly the same. Our other sample, remember, it was kind of a mint green. If you want it a little different, we have to do something different. So what we can do is we're actually going to make, well, here's a couple things. You could put an inline style in this paragraph and give it a mint green color, or what we're going to do is do something called a class. Now, we're going to use two identification elements. One is called an ID, one is called a class. And what you'll see these more and more. Classes you can use kind of generically multiple times. IDs are meant to use once. So you might have an ID called nav top, and you would only use that ID for the navigation at the top of the page. But if we wanted to make something like mint green, we could just call it mint green, and we could use that all over the page as a class. And that's what I'll do right now. So I'm going to make a class called mint green. And I'll just go down here and I'll do a dot, and I'll just call it mint green. And that's my selector. So a selector can be an HTML element. Right now it's a class. And I'm going to put my opening and closing brackets so I don't forget. So I'm going to put that in there first, and then I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to hit tab so it looks nice and clean. And I'm going to put, basically all I need for my mint green is just a color. So I'm going to put background color. Now I already have background color, so let me copy this so I don't have to type it, and I'll paste it here. Now this background color is basically that same color. Now if I wanted to make it mint green, again, just to get used to our hex colors, I like to do it all white to start. That's all white, and we know which one is the green. RG, the middle one is the green. So let's say we put these down. We put down this one to like DD, and it doesn't matter if you use caps or small, although I've been using caps, so I'll stay with caps. And then I'll make the last one DD, and we'll see what that looks like. Now, you might say, well, what does it look like? I don't see anything. That's because I don't have it applied to anything. We have a class, but it isn't applied. So how do we apply a class? We're going to go to the second paragraph down here and say P class equals, and we don't use the dot when we actually declare it. We just put it in quotes, and we're just going to say mint green. And it has to be spelled exactly the same way. So it's going to say P class equals mint green, and then when it's using the class, it uses a dot because CSS knows that, hey, that's a class. So HTML knows it's a class because we say, hey, P class equals this, and CSS knows it's a class when it sees that dot. And those names have to match up. So when it looks for that, it's going to look for that dot mint green, and it should change the color. And let's see if it does. And there it is. It's kind of, now if we want it a little bit darker right now, because it's a little light, maybe we'll make it a little bit darker. And we have our green all the way up. We can even put we could put these down a little bit. Maybe down to C's. And maybe we'll put this one down to like E's and see if that comes out a little bit darker. And there's a little bit darker of a mint green. Maybe a little too dark, but that's okay for now. What we did is we used a class. We gave that particular paragraph a class name, and then it's actually using this property of background color. You know, even if we made it, you know, if we changed it to bold, or we changed the font or anything else, or we did a different margin left, maybe we did something called margin left, and I made it more. I made it like, you know, 40 pixels. And I ran it. Now you can see it increases that because now it's doing things that override this. Now one thing I do want to point out is, to start, every paragraph gets these properties, including this one. Let me run this again to take that away. So the only thing that's happening here, this is overriding anything that's up here. or if you didn't have anything applied. So it's going to take this and it's going to only inherit this. That's because it is a paragraph already. You might say, why didn't it get all, default? Because since it is a paragraph, it's taking all these right here. So even though, because it's a paragraph, it's taking all the other ones, but then it's also adding this to it. So that's another property that's getting added to it because it's kind of overriding the original one. So you can override any of these, just like I overrided the margin just previously. I could change the font if I wanted to change the font to something else for this paragraph. And let me do that. Let me change the font. I'll copy this. Now, they have font family, and we're going to use that, except when we use font family, I'm going to put like a serif font. I'll put like Cambria, I'll put a comma, and then I'll do Times New Roman, and then a comma, and then as a third choice, I'll just put serif for now. And that's just kind of a generic that we always put as the third choice, and you'll see that. Now, because Times New Roman is three words, we have to put that in quotes because it keeps those together, or else it thinks there's something else happening there. So Cambria, Times New Roman, serif. And let me see what happens here. If I run it, you could see this is in Cambria. Now it gets a little smaller. Even though it's the same size, it shows up a little bit smaller. I can make the font size bigger if I wanted to. I could say font size, 20 px. And I'll run it. There, it's a little bigger right now. And you can see it even moved it a little bit because it's a bigger font. Moved it down a little bit. So maybe I'll make it like 18. Just kind of split the difference. And now they look pretty similar, even though one's a sans serif and one's a serif. So anything I put in here, it'll inherit these first because it is a paragraph, and then these will override anything that's there. And this might be a good place to take a break. We'll finish up with our last paragraph in our last video.